Hello, everybody. This is our Exposing the Narrative pod stream. And the title for today is The Color of Law Enforcement. So, what does that mean? Well, there are two concepts: what the law says and what is the color of law, which is kind of a derivative of law and what people think it means and what's enforced. And oftentimes, what's done is actually, call it the spirit of the law or what someone thinks it is. So that's what we're going to go to. So now let's do the introductions of who we have on the stream today. I'm Steve Sandman, former mechanical engineer, now truck driver, now part-time mini podcaster. I've been divorced twice.
All right. And this is Plutarch over here. I'm going to be a little bit more in the backseat on this one. This is Steve's idea. This is his show. So we're going to have fun. And unfortunately for us today, Pastor Nick is quite sick. So he was unable to join us. The fellow on the bottom of the screen here, he is Sam. He runs a channel called Bungalows for Bachelors. He does a lot of construction, manly type stuff. And he has been on Elena's channel a few times, and he was available for this. So we just kind of pulled him in. You might have seen him around some of Mike Sartain's stuff. So, yeah. Sam, you want to say hello?
Sure thing. Good to be on the show. Good to be a guest. Thank you guys for having me on. Yeah, if you want to see anything that I do, you can check out my Telegram group, t.me/BFB Success, or you can check it out, Bungalows for Bachelors on YouTube. That's where most of my content is. Appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm excited to see what we have to talk about today.
All right. Sweet. So, Steve, lead us off.
Well, as an introduction to the color of law, maybe you've heard the term over the past few years of color revolutions. Well, there was a color revolution in Ukraine in 2014, which is pertinent to where we're at today. There was a color revolution in Egypt, where things kind of got stirred up there. You could even go back to the color revolution back in Iran. Who was the Democratic leader before the Shah of Iran? But okay, it's just stirring up things and causing things. So I don't know if it's directly related, but the color of just means stirring up things. So I looked up, I don't think this is the official definition, but it was on when I did a Google search. The color of law. What is the color of law? So it is acts done by federal, state, or local officials within their lawful authority. Okay, well, that's the law. It's acts done beyond the bounds of that official's lawful authority if the acts are done while the official is pretending to act in the performance of their other official duties. Oh, okay, well, I guess they're using a little bit of discretion there. Also, it's the appearance of legal authority or an apparently legal right that may not actually exist. Okay, we're taking a little bit further afield. And then it's often used to describe the abuse of power under the guise of state authority, which is illegal. Okay, so we're going to talk about this from a man's standpoint. A married man who's getting divorced. And many married men have encounters with the police. There could be a domestic violence call Doesn't mean anything actually happened. Doesn't mean he's actually the perpetrator. But yeah, they show up and they usually go a little bit harder on the man, maybe even arrest him. Is that law? Is that the law or is that the color of law? And then later on, how many men have restraining orders on them? A lot of, decent men had no issues with crime or any societal problems. And now they're finding themselves in these situations and damn, I didn't do anything wrong. Well, yeah. Guess what? That's the color of law. So most people don't understand the difference between the law and the color of law. And then once you get into the system, really very few people care about how the color of law is used and abused. Okay, and it's abused by women. The courts, especially family courts, CPS, which is Child Protection Services, the police, your friends, the family. Okay, well, if he's accused of these things, he must be guilty. I mean, that's the perception people have. And you can get in trouble with your employers for being falsely accused. Did you do anything wrong? Maybe, maybe not, but we haven't determined that yet. And the public thinks that men are the problem. Oh, he was emotionally abusive or blah, 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 or he did this, he did that. So what say you, Plutarch, about my lead-in?
Well, a number of things came to mind as examples of color of law. So when I was working with some law enforcement trainers, they described this concept of force. And one of the things that they describe is the use of words, the use of shouting is actually in law considered force. Hey, stop doing that. That is a level of force. Now it's considered a low level of force. But that can be like if you start yelling at somebody, that can be an escalation. And then they can decide then the other person can decide that they're going to escalate to a higher level of force. And at some point you're going to hit a level of force where, fists are involved. And if the cop is using the level, an inappropriate level of force, you say, oh, well, but he's legally justified. Well, in the law, there's a whole system of levels to determine whether or not the force he was using was actually justified. So so what I see here is he's operating under the color of law, but maybe he's not applying the law correctly. And I will admit that for cops, this is a hard problem. How do you know where to stop with your application of force? That could be physical force, non-physical force, all those sorts of things. And then there's a different sort of problem here where we get to things that my personal favorite, known as ERPOs, extreme risk protection orders, are what are known as ex parte orders. So the defendant is not there when the order is filed. And this is in some interpretations of constitutional law, a unconstitutional sort of type of law. Now that hasn't been adjudicated by the Supreme Court yet. And I have to put all those disclaimers there that for the moment they are considered constitutional. But here's another concept of color of law. These laws have not been adjudicated whether or not they're constitutional, but they're given that presumption until they are. So we don't have a firm answer yet onto whether these laws are constitutional, but it's presumed that they are. And that's a form of color of law. They might actually be unconstitutional. We just haven't gotten that far yet. So I can see lots of ways we can go with this.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of abuses. So when a man gets a protection order on him, he can no longer possess firearms.
Correct.
So wait a minute. Isn't that a right that he has given by God and affirmed by the Bill of Rights? Well, gee, it's gone now. Really, there wasn't much evidence to take it away. His right to go where he pleases. And now he has a restriction of a zone he can't go around, which might actually include his church. So now, that's restricting his freedom of religion. It's restricting who he can talk to. That's kind of First Amendment too. We could probably go through and say, gee, this is really restrictive, and it's kind of based on, it's based on regulations and what the laws have been, but is there any firm foundation here? And that's kind of what you're getting at, right, Plutarch?
Yeah, it's the concept of a law being on the books and being enforced, but never having really tested whether or not it meets the constitutional bar for being considered lawful behavior.
Yeah. Now,
go ahead.
I want to next go into, we kind of touched on it. We all say, we can say this. Yes, we're Americans. We believe a person is innocent until proven guilty. Oh, yeah, I'll die on that hill. In reality, that's a theory that we believe a person is presumed innocent until guilt is proven. In reality, a man is presumed guilty by everyone. Once a woman says, he did this, I'm afraid of him, or, he cheated on me, or he wants to do this or that, and, or, he abused me. Okay, you know what? Everyone presumes he's guilty. Okay, that's a presumption. Now, in the courts, there are 3 levels of evidence. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm paraphrasing. I could be completely wrong. I'm just a guy who's been around and seen it. So in the criminal courts, for a felony, you have to be guilty, proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a fairly high standard. In a civil court, which doesn't typically involve criminal aspects, or not, you're not going to be convicted of criminal things. It's more monetary. They determine the truth or the guilt, if you slandered someone or something like that. It's the preponderance of the evidence. That's a lower standard. And if you've ever been in the family courts, they have a completely different standard. It's the best interests of the children. As defined by who? What does this even mean? Well, it's the best interests of the children defined by, in general, the people who, the judge, the lawyers, the guardian ad litem, whatever. And what are the incentives? Well, the state has financial incentives, actually, to get your child support as high as possible to transfer to the woman, because they get some federal benefits from that. So if you're a poor man, they don't really give a shit. If you're a man of some middle class, you have an income, oh damn, they do want to get you to pay, and that's where the system is funded. There's actually you've heard about the military industrial complex. Yeah, there's actually a divorce industrial complex. And it's far beyond what you imagine. Somebody has to feed this beast and keep, pay the salaries of all the public workers who were involved in your case.
Well, Steve, it sounds to me like you're saying that the system has a vested interest in keeping the courts full of divorce cases and child support cases, and how might they go about doing that?
Well, I don't know. How about we pass some laws?
I got a thought to pipe in here if you got a moment.
Go for it.
No, go ahead, Sam. We're welcome.
Yeah, so you were talking about how the whole innocent until proven guilty thing, and you were describing how there's an implication does not in reality that does not seem to be the case on what's being applied. And what came to mind was how most of the society that we currently right, and 50,000 years ago, if women were assuming that men were innocent until proven guilty, there would probably be a lot more dead or abused women. And so a natural function of like an evolutionary adaptation for a woman is to basically, if there's any possible sign of a man being a threat, either physically, sexually, or whatever, then like putting your guard up is just naturally going to be like the way it's going to be the natural tendency. It's not going to be, oh, he's probably innocent, right? It's a type A error. They would rather think a guy is guilty than think he's innocent, right? Because if you do it the other way around, you end up getting screwed, possibly literally. So like that's going to have implications on the system, because if that's how most women are going to react and think about these cases.
Oh no.
Oh no, we lost him.
I'll expand on what he was saying. That's true. So in many cases, a woman who wants the divorce and separation and all that will do a legal, verbal, some kind of attack on him, financial, or have him out of the house or whatever. That's her attack. And then now she's scared that he might respond with something. So then she gets the restraining order, which prevents him from responding. So it's an attack and retreat and hide kind of thing. And sometimes it can be a setup. But this believe all women. Women don't lie about being abused and all that. Well, I think they do. Other people probably don't. But there's just this whole desire to protect women. I think Sam might be back.
You dropped there for a minute.
What part did I get cut off?
You were talking. So you were gone for about 90 seconds. You were talking about. I'm trying to remember exactly where you got cut off.
What women do, and that they might be harmed if they didn't behave this way.
Yeah, so I mean, long story short, basically, like women are going to be incentivized to not assume innocent, and that's going to affect the women and the men that are in the system that we have. And so it makes sense that in reality, when people look at someone who might be like, we want to think everything's fair and equal, right? That everyone's innocent until proven guilty, but our instinct in our lizard brains are going to be operating on a different level that might think, oh, maybe something's up with this guy, because it's safer to do that.
Well, okay, Sam, here's a question for you.
Sure.
Do you think that even men might react in a similar way? The sort of white knight problem that we have?
Yes, I would say that it could go both ways, because like one way, yeah, the white knights that are conditioned by the women, absolutely. That could be like one line of thinking. You could also say that men might react in that way because like we're going to have the same type A error desire. Like if we're walking in the woods and we see, like, we come upon another man, right, and he's got a sword and a rock, like our default assumption should probably not be that he's a safe person to like play chess with, right? So
Yep.
it would behoove both, like in both circumstances, it's possible that the default might not be to assume he's innocent. Now, for those of us who are like capable of thinking rationally after having an instinctual reaction, like we can override that, of course, pretty quickly and think, okay, like this is another dude. And generally, most people are not out to like cause harm and problems. Most people just like want to like survive and be good in life and stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting question. What do you think?
There's another thing here. Okay, I'm going to speak as a 61-year-old guy who went to high school back in, I graduated from high school in 1981. And I believe the Department of Education was formed in the 70s by Jimmy Carter. But I had a kind of a rigorous education. Small town, 60 kids in my class, 30 guys approximately. 5 of us became engineers, college degree engineers. Okay, so there is a level of rigorous thinking and logic and being able to being taught math and laws and all that. And it teaches your brain how to think. The old method of math, phonics, it was a rigorous thing. Whereas now, they don't, my perception of school, even college now, is it's less rigorous. They're teaching children and young adults what to think, not how to think. There's not this ability to use logic. We're not graduating the engineers that we used to. And an engineer is like someone who can think. That means software, a coder, things like that. That's a rarity. I mean, it's not a rarity, but we used to graduate a lot of those people back in the 60s. So the level of rigorous thinking is not there. So now you're going to get a pool of jurors if you choose to take your case to trial. But most of them, their mind is not formed the way in a rigorous manner. Plus, it costs a shitload of money. And so most things are played out. And because you know how it's going to go. And so a lot of it is just, frankly, it's a lot of bullshit.
I definitely agree with you that like there's going to be a lot of bullshit in the system. I think the few things that, one, there might be a perception that college is spitting out a lot more of these. Well, actually, I would agree with you that colleges are spitting out a whole lot more of these like non-hardened men out, because college is not a place where men go to get hardened. But I'm a manufacturing engineer from Texas A&M, and I will say that like most of the course content is probably somewhat similar to what you took. I would say there's definitely additional junk thrown in that you probably didn't have to deal with. But yeah, I think your general premise of like the people that are being spit out both by colleges or just people that are reading everything that's on social media, they're going to be conditioned by a certain amount, like kind of principle, and that's going to color the way juries act for sure. I agree.
Well, I would say the people coming out with those degrees are not necessarily of less quality, probably the same. But as the population of this country has grown, those programs have not grown. So the percentage of engineers we graduate versus the percentage of engineers that are graduating in China, we should have a lot more. And we got all these lawyers in Congress. You know who who runs the Japanese, or no, the Chinese government? Most of those were, I've heard, were trained as engineers. It's a different method of thought, and it's we don't have as much of that as existed when our country was growing strongly economically. Now, that's anecdotal. It's my feelings. I don't really have facts to back that up. But what say you, Plutarch?
Well, I had another thought here, because not only are we not graduating as many engineers, that much is actually in the data. There's been an explosion of liberal arts degrees types. Your writing, marketing, and even some of your what I would call soft sciences, like psychology, sociology, those kind of things. Explosions of those. But then you have, when it comes to jury selection, you have a second level problem. The people who you want on your jury are going to be the first people who are going to be able to get out of jury duty. So, for example, I can get out of jury duty anytime I want because I have a built-in legal exception on the basis of my status and situation. And the reason I have that built-in exception is because I simply cannot afford the time to go do jury duty. And everyone knows it, which is why it's a built-in exception. So I can always get out of doing jury duty. And the sad thing is that most people who have that rigorous mindset are so in demand elsewhere that they're going to be able to get out of the jury. And so you're going to end up with people who they're not doing anything with their lives. You're going to end up with, honestly, a bunch of stay-at-home mommies on your jury panel because they have no way to get out of jury duty. We had to do this here recently. I got out of jury duty, no problem. I sent in my form, ticked the box with my pro forma exception, provided the documentation that my legal exception was valid. They took it. I was let out. Elena had to do hers 2 weeks later. She was not, because she didn't have that exception. She didn't have any of the exceptions. And she didn't have those because she's a stay-at-home wife. She's not needed anywhere, so she could. So you're going to see a lot of women, particularly older women, on these juries because they are who is available.
Yeah. So let's cut this short here. We've kind of talked about that. So, in civil or criminal, you can take things to a jury, but this is the jury you're looking at. And then you're imposed with a lot of financial cost to pay your attorney to go there. There's no guarantee that people on the jury will have any rational ability to think, oh, well, I'll just get the decision by a judge. Good luck there. I mean, I don't get me started on judges. For my first divorce, I think there were 3 family court judges of the divorce case and child support and all that. All were women. And then another one when I had claimed that I violated an order. That was in a different county. That was a woman judge. Yeah. I don't have a lot of respect for them. Let's put it that way. So, moving on. Okay, now let's talk about the other laws that have been, and this all, I'm gonna get somewhere pretty soon. I guess I'm gonna have to move a little bit faster. Since no fault divorce laws have been instituted, which are really bad for men, in my opinion, many other laws, regulations, practices have been implemented, which are detrimental to both men and families. Primarily, remove the father. but this harms the children. Ultimately, it also harms the wife, because even though they may get some money and get free, generally their life is not better afterwards. So what are these things that have been implemented? Well, we have the Violence Against Women Act. Wait a minute. Why do we need a Violence Against Women Act if everybody's equal and we're looking for equality? And women can serve in the military, and a woman can do anything a man can do. Why does she need special protection? And, well, it's kind of the color of law. There's the domestic abuse model, and I guess it's called, or domestic abuse arrest. It's called the Duluth model, something that came from Duluth, Minnesota, where when the cops show up, in order to keep the peace, they're supposed to arrest somebody, and it's basically the man. And then look at the laws that have been passed for protective orders, to enable protective orders, and some might be ex parte, but they're all based on the feelings that a woman feels she's in danger. You can say, well, I haven't done anything, or what I've done, yeah, she might have not liked it, but it wasn't illegal. Well, yet she feels threatened. So all this is biased against the men. So now here comes the key statement. I think all these things are subversive, because civilization, Christendom, our whole society has been built on patriarchy. Men rule. Men are the head of their household. A man and his family, a man provides for his family, makes the decisions on for his family, raises the children, and makes the overall decision, even if his wife doesn't agree. So when the system is opposed to patriarchy, it's subversive. This idea of egalitarianism and, oh, we're all equal and all that. Gee, interesting theory. But when there's a train derailment, how many women do you see out there cleaning up and putting the cars back on the tracks? When there's a storm and the power lines come down, how many women do you see out there putting up the power lines?
How many women are bricklayers?
How many women are carpenters, Sam?
I actually know one very excellent female carpenter. I'm a big fan.
But only one. Only one.
only one. Yeah. And she's her skills in the organization are actually end up being more useful than like her physical ability to like lift big ass beams and stuff. So like, it's not the same
Absolutely.
kind of work.
Yeah. I have no problem with that. Okay, and I drive a semi-truck. How many women are semi-truck drivers? Not that many. There are some out there. The job's not that difficult that most women couldn't do it. They just choose not to. Okay, that's fine. But I don't discriminate against them. But I do notice that, yeah, okay, our world is built on men working hard, going out and getting the job done, making the decisions in the workforce, in companies, in government, in their families. That's patriarchy. And that built civilization. Now, you can say, oh, there are problems. Hey, there's always problems. But were the problems bigger when patriarchy was still under basically the default system, or are they bigger now?
Well, they definitely haven't gotten smaller recently. That's for sure. Good Lord.
I made some notes
You
on
know,
this.
I
Go ahead.
watched Gladiator recently, and it was very, very fascinating to watch, like the way Hollywood used to produce movies in a somewhat realistic light, and the dynamic between very powerful men and very powerful women, and how like a woman's power like came through the men she was around, because all of what they were able to accomplish and get, and like what they were able to get, was from their ability to communicate in a very special way that like worked with the men they were with, right? And in the case of Gladiator, like basically this woman was end up it's like she's stuck with this emperor dude who's the bad guy, and so she's manipulating him the whole time, which is good, right? Because that's what she has to do to survive, and keep her son alive. But like, you know, there was a very like natural balance of power when that was like the case. When there was a bunch of you know, and I'm not arguing for the case of like return to patriarchy, but there was a very interesting natural balance of power that existed for a long time when men were, you know, actively in these roles. And, you know, even some of the men that were up there at the top, like if they had a wife, I guarantee you the wife was like exercising that power just on a different level. And so it just was not seen. It was very subliminal and all of that stuff. So, you know, I think it's very fascinating to see the way that functioned.
Well, but so Sam, what you're saying is that the woman's power was derived from the power of the man she could get with.
Correct.
Okay, then it would logically follow from there that the more powerful men there are, for women to latch onto and exercise their own power. And
I would agree, yeah, unless they're gay.
Okay. So then women, if they want more power, they should want more powerful men in the world doing powerful male things, because that's how women get power.
It certainly used to be. I would argue that still works.
I don't. Yeah, I think we agree here.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get into the issue of equality.
Oh no.
So,
oh boy.
Well,
there is no such thing as a quality man or quality woman.
Okay. Let's say equal worth. Equal worth is different than equal outcome, equal ability, equal roles, equal authority, and equal responsibility. Now, is a woman a lesser creature in her value or before God than I am? No. She is the same worth before God. But here's the deal. I'll have the authority. I'll take the responsibility. I'll work harder. I'll provide for you. All you have to do is, be the woman. Let me make the decisions. I'll if the shit hits the fan or I make a bad decision, it's my fault. And I'll figure out a way. You just have to stand by my side, and probably it's going to work. Now, are all men capable of doing that? Are there some bad men out there? Hell yes, there are. That's the exception. We shouldn't make laws that treat the exception as the typical.
You inserted a very interesting word in there, which was that a woman should let you make the decisions.
Yeah, okay, that crept in. You better bust me on that one.
The beautiful thing is that, like, I would presume that women's nature has not foregone any of its, like, great adaptations that are filtration mechanisms for women selecting the best men that are going to take care of them, keep them safe, provide them the things that are going to give them what they want. So because those filtration mechanisms are still in place, most likely, they're still going to be able to filter for the best men. And the best men are not going to be the ones where they ask the woman if it's okay to make decisions, or like they're just going to let them make decisions. It's not even going to be a discussion, right?
Exactly. And you caught me on that. That's an important point. The man just has to do it, and she has to follow. Giving her veto power ultimately puts her in charge.
Yeah. And
I
I think
this is what we're going to do unless you
right?
say no. Well, who's in charge? And that's kind of what you're getting at. She doesn't let the man do anything. It's his life adventure. She can choose to come along. Then that's a mental attitude.
Yeah. All women have veto power all the time. You can always choose to not come with, right?
Right.
And that, men, is an example of just how pervasive the female mentality is. Even those of us in the red pill space, it still creeps in. Like that's how strong it is.
Yeah, I slipped up in my language, and I'm glad you guys caught it. That's great. Okay, here's another tell in language. When you hear men say "I feel" instead of "I think," women will always say "I feel." They don't say "I think," blah 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 blah. So just start paying attention to that. And people who feel, that's their emotions, they're really not thinking before they open their mouth. So now, with this patriarchy thing, go ahead. Okay. Well, I was going to move on to page 2, but you have something to say first.
Yeah.
We might be losing him here.
To feel their emotions, right? Oh, am I going in and out?
You better start over, Sam.
Okay. The whole feel thing does not mean that men are not supposed to feel emotions or express emotions. It's just that there's generally a overuse of the word feel.
I know where he is, and he might be in and out for a little bit. But okay. I agree with his point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't say men weren't supposed to feel, but they're not supposed to make their feelings dominate their decision process. So now let's talk about how
feel things all day long, but
hey, Sam, you're cutting in and out right now. He might not be able to hear us.
Yeah, we'll just have to keep talking over him until he gets in a better place. Okay, so this whole patriarchy thing, how important is it? Come on, let's just think. Not feel, let's think. Okay, fathers are very important. When you start trashing fathers, it's not good. Because, fatherless males make up most criminals. Fatherless females make up most single mothers, welfare recipients, divorced single mothers. So, do the individual police officers stop and think that when they start screwing with the fathers and removing the fathers, because that's what they're told to do, they're actually subverting patriarchy? Well, they don't think about that, but they're subverting their own civilization and making their lives more dangerous. Now, maybe not today, but the people who are causing the problems today are results of decisions that were made 10, 15 years ago by other police officers. Not exclusively, but, Come on, guys. If you're participating in a system that removes fathers and rewards mothers and creates more single mothers and more children raised by single mothers, just because they're okay, this happens to 50-60% of men, because theoretically there's maybe 1-2% of bad men who actually should happen to. This is a bad idea. Thus ends my rant.
Well, okay, but to the police out there, there's a practical problem for you in the future here, because you, by removing fathers from the home, you might say, you're telling yourself, I'm removing this bad person because the law says that this is a bad person by X, Y, and Z definitions. Now, that may or may not be true, but if you're removing a lot of men and the actual percentage of men who are bad actors on the back end is much lower, what you're really doing is creating the next class of violent criminals who's going to, unfortunately, they're going to try and take you out. You have created a cycle that makes your own job more dangerous in the future.
And you are such a dumb shit that the divorce problem within your buddies in the police force is no different. They're suffering from the same shit, and you see it over there, but then you go implement the stuff that's fucking over your buddy. I mean, what are you thinking?
It all works out much better when all of the guys on the police force agree to just bang one of the wives.
Yeah,
I don't know that we want to go down that path.
Yeah. But I think that's a point that needs to be made to cops. I think this is something that they really need to hear, is that by I don't want to say mindlessly enforcing the law, but by trying to hide behind the color of law and saying, well, this is what I have to do because the judge or the system says I have to do it. You need to understand that you are creating a worse problem for yourself in the future. And I actually think we're starting to see the effect of that as cops leave the police force.
A lot of good men with a conscience and moral principles just can't stomach staying in this system. I mean, okay, I know the job is difficult. It's horrendous. It takes mental toll on you. I don't want the job. But, then when you're doing things and, it bothers you, you just get out of the job. So a lot of the good men are leaving. And you know that. And those are guys, probably the more dependable guys. Because they're more giving, they're more self-serving, or more generous, and they have a sense of duty. And to summarize, you used to have that motto on your police cars, to serve and protect. It's kind of going away. You haven't painted this on your police cars yet, but it kind of seems to me it should be to arrest and subvert.
If not in ideal, then in fact.
Now, you know what? It's going to seem like I'm anti-police. Well, I have had some not great interactions with city police. And it's all been triggered by divorce and women situations. But I've also encountered some sheriff's deputies and highway patrol, and I find just a different demeanor among those guys. And I have a lot of respect for sheriff's deputies and for highway patrol. Yeah, sometimes they write me a ticket, but they're very respectful. And they're not out to screw me over and throw me into the system. And sheriff's deputies, okay, they're not probably under the same level of political scrutiny as police officers. And under this political correctness and diversity and diversity, equity, inclusion, and all this. Oh man, can you imagine all the crap seminars and meetings these police officers have to sit through, and the level of indoctrination? I don't envy you guys, but I'm saying, you know what? You got to separate your mind and think about the future, because it's, guys like me, guys like 50-60% of guys when they're in their 40s and 50s have had encounters with you police officers in the course of a divorce, and they're setting their opinion. And these are the law-abiding producers of our society who, when things get tough, these are the guys you want to depend upon. Stop fucking them over. That's all I want to say.
Well, think about it this. I think about it this way. We have these, what do they call them, blue alerts now, where you can help cops out. They're in trouble. You can, like, I don't even know what you're supposed to do, but like, or these movements like Blue Lives Matter, and to some extent, yes, Blue Lives Matter. I mean, they matter just as much as Black lives or all lives, but to me, you have to be in this day and age, you have to be able to answer the question why I should help you. Now, I personally have never had a interaction with a police officer that was not related to my lead foot. I like driving fast. I drive fast cars. I'm going to budget a little bit for ticket money. Okay. But I know what other men have gone through, and I know how police officers treat men. And I'm sitting here going, if I know that I get sideways, you're going to come at me. If I get sideways in my relationship, and and a cop gets called on a DV, you're not going to help me. And so I am now asking the question, as somebody who hasn't had a bad interaction with a cop yet in this form, do I really want to help you when I know that you're not going to return the favor to me?
Yeah, well, you know what? I was arrested once for contempt of court. I was arrested in the Catholic Cathedral in Crookston, Minnesota. There was no restraining order against me, but I was restricted from having private contact with my daughters. So I wanted to go to their Christmas program and sit in the audience and watch. So my ex-wife called because she knew I was there. And the cop came in and he arrested me in the church. Good. Well, handcuffs and everything. Because I said, no, you're going to arrest me here. I'm not walking outside so you can put the cuffs on. Do it here. And I shuffled my feet and I asked to talk to the priest. Oh, gee, I was resisting arrest. So I was representing myself, and in the court hearing, this cop came up on the stand. And that fucker lied. That fucker outright lied. He didn't know what was going on. He wanted to throw me under the bus. It's probably to sue someone in the hierarchy. But why the hell do I give a shit about you police officers when for something so damn trivial? This is just so absurd. And the guy gets on the stand and he lies. Sorry, that affects my view of all of you.
Well, and that gets to something that, again, actionable. Like if you're a police officer, it is easy to want to embellish the situation because it makes you look better. If the judge, we know, like in a speeding ticket situation, we know that if the police like to write tickets for 5 over. Why? Because it's easier to prove to a judge that you were doing that. Well, but in the situation that Steve's talking about, it's a little more up to interpretation, shall we say. And so the judge might look at that and say, well, okay, Mr. Police Officer, he wasn't really being that, like resisting arrest, really? And the judge might knock it down. And if the judge knocks it down, that looks bad on your arrest record. So if you as a cop are embellishing the truth a little bit, all you have to do to help us men out here, to help us help you, is to just stop embellishing the record a little bit and just say, well, no, he actually, just say, nope, he was just shuffling his feet and he didn't want to go outside. He wanted to be arrested right there in front of everybody. And that, and say, look, that made me a little uncomfortable, but it wasn't, there was nothing physical. And yeah, the judge is probably going to say, so nothing really happened and it gets knocked down. But that's more honest.
Well, it is more honest, and it's so easy. Now, I know you're pressured to support the prosecutors and get convictions. But, this much difference. Telling the truth and, just not it's kind of just playing the system. You know how to play the rules in the course of your job. All of us do. I'm going to do my job, but when there's bullshit, I'm going to kind of skirt around that. Find a way to avoid it. Hey, this is just one of those things. You guys know how to do it. Why the fuck are you willing to throw me under the bus? And, keep in mind, okay, single children are not in a good place. I mean, that's not something we should be promoting.
Single children are not the friend of cops. That you don't want to be making single children. It doesn't help you personally. Go ahead.
Do you think it's more interesting or not interesting? Do you think it's more like the cops got more investment in making decisions that are like going to basically solve his hindbrain problem? For example, like I'm just making shit up at this point, but like if this cop's got a wife at home who's aware of the case and aware of what happened because he tells her all of his stories from work or whatever, and he ends up telling her a story where basically this situation happened in a church, and all of a sudden wifey poo is now like probably she's going to be more incentivized to side with like the woman simply because she's going to be able to relate to the woman better, right? Women's going to have children. In this case, usually women react negatively when they feel like someone's threatening their children. And like, so he might miss out on the old poon if he tells his wife these stories and doesn't like act this way. And looks like all of these things are framing the way he's going to see the situation. Right. And this is an exaggeration. But ultimately, like the men who are conditioned to think this way, like when it comes down to it, they're like afraid to miss out on their opportunity to reproduce, right? On some kind of level. Like that's what they're threatening if they decide to like risk it, right? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's always. Damn, you just brought this back to the center of the universe, that hole between a woman's legs, and a man's desire for it, and a woman's desire to say, "No, it's all good. I didn't do anything wrong." So I'm just saying it that way, not to make fun of it. It's just like, yeah, you can pretty much bring every problem back to some kind of that dynamic, and it has some truth to it.
Yeah, I mean, sexual energy is like what drives men to perform, so it kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Well, Sam's example is superlative, but that makes it illustrative. But let's say that this guy has been conditioned over the years of telling his wife these stories, and she's conditioned him with, well, but you should respond this way. What about how did the woman feel about it? Always never. She's not concerning herself with the guy. She's always concerning herself with the woman. And then when she asks, and he says, "Oh, well, the woman felt this," and the woman said that, and she goes, "Oh, well, don't you understand how bad that is?" And she feels like she can put her own feelings into that, and then he starts to feel those feelings for the woman.
Right.
So he's projecting himself as a strong, scary man who is the defender of the poor women's. In order to tell his wife that, yeah, okay, I have all these powers, but I'm really use them for good. So now, can I get pussy?
Yeah, will you touch me? Will you touch my pee-pee?
Yeah. Wow. Sam got right to the core of it there. But, I think there's a lot that goes into this for cops, because I do think that, we would need to broaden this out to eventually, okay, the prosecutors, I'm not even sure we need to get started on the whole concept of female judges. Not only is that not biblical in the slightest, but
yeah, well, and it's not the topic of today's store.
Right, but it's something to hang on to out there. Is these guys who are doing this have all these female pressures. So the cop has the female judge. Cops know what their court schedule is. They know who their judges are going to be, and
sure they do.
And Steve, let's say we go back to your situation. Maybe the cop is in front of a female judge, and he embellishes that story a little bit because he knows it's going to play well with that judge.
Well, it was a female judge. A small town, northern Minnesota.
Exactly.
One of the more liberal, supposedly corrupt counties, anecdotally. They just run men through the ringer up there. That's the system. It's similar to those movies you see where small town Georgia, and they arrest you and throw you through the ringer. It's the same shit. And yeah, that was the system. And okay, my wife lived in that town. I didn't. Her uncle used to be the chief of police in the town. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. That's 20 years ago or 30 years ago now. But okay, she had connections, and yeah, I got railroaded. Okay. But who got hurt? Okay, I'm still here. I survived. Who really got hurt? My daughters. Yeah, okay. They're the real victims. And they're the victims because that's what their mother wanted. And that's what the police supported. And that's what the system supported. Hey, the real victims here are the children. And, you can do whatever the fuck you want to me. Survive or I won't. But my heart goes to my children. And a police officer's heart should go to the children. And they should recognize when they're destroying these men and families, it affects the children. And I've heard it said, I haven't said this outright, but I've heard it said by many people, people who were maybe a bit older than me, who talk about stories of, there's this woman who she mentioned, when I was growing up, I wasn't great at home because sometimes my dad was drunk, and then I'd go over to my friend's house because that's what we did to escape any issues there. Okay, now think about this. Was she better off being raised in that environment with a mother and father together, with a way to get around it, and she still had that father in her life? Now, this is an extreme case, but I contend she was still better off in that environment than in the divorced environment. And that environment is kind of an extreme case. In most cases, that's not what's going on. The guy's a hardworking guy. There's some family strife in the home. The kids are there. And if you intervene, it's only going to get worse. And then the kids are deprived of their father. Even a less than ideal situation with the father involved will turn out way better for the kids than removing him to supposedly correct that less than ideal situation.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Steve, so I have a question for you.
Sure.
What are some other things that cops might be able to do to? I think we've made the case that that what they're doing isn't helping them, and I think we've talked about a couple of things they can do. But
yeah, well, you mentioned they're all carrying cameras now.
I did. I think I mentioned that offline, but yes, I did mention that.
Right, that's what I mean. So when you come in, you're going to have these domestic abuse calls. Make sure you have plenty of video of the woman. Ask her some questions. Show, get something on tape that shows that she's just kind of erratic. And I know that a lot of domestic abuse, in fact, the majority of domestic abuse is actually women against men. Oftentimes a man just takes it and takes it and takes it. Might explode at some point. But no, it doesn't just happen out of the blue. Every man has his trigger. It takes a time. Some men who blow up just have to learn, okay, you have to learn how to manage it. But, okay, just get some data that shows the woman at fault too. And realize that once the system gets involved and comes to the protection of the woman, there will be no resolution, because sometimes people have, I think when a couple is divorced, you should throw them in a room and lock the key for about 24 hours and force them to talk. Well, no, it's not a cool down period. It's a heating up period, because now you can't escape each other. And you know what? Now you got to get along, you got to talk, and you got to solve your differences. And I mean,
Yes,
I don't know if
because
it's
using
realistic,
reason and
but
having more and more conversations with women is how we have how we've solved those things. We talk about it.
I was gonna
yeah,
say
well,
that.
you don't talk about it. You can't reason once they have a mercenary on their side to beat you up.
Well,
So
and that
just, but yeah, I mean, it's a thought. I don't
well
know if it's a good
that
thought.
mercenary bit is a bit of a problem, because one of the things that, as Steve mentioned, we started to learn is that women tend to use non-physical abuse. Gaslighting is a favorite technique of theirs. But we also have started to learn that women will use physical abuse. They just don't use it in the sort of overwhelming way that men do. They'll slap you, and the guy will just go, well, I'm not a man if I can't take it. To the men, what I would say is, this isn't about you being a man anymore. I know it feels like you're weak if you say that, you're the victim. But one of the things that cops I've talked to have told me is that the first person who calls is often viewed as the victim by the police. So if you call while she's beating on you, guess what? The cop's going to come in. Now, he's still got his programming that he's working, but he's going to be a little bit more open to the idea that, hey, maybe something is going on here with this woman. Maybe she isn't the problem. Maybe she isn't this paragon. The other thing for men, I wear shirts with a shirt pocket in it. My cell phone fits in that shirt pocket. If your woman starts getting uppity, start taking video yourself on your cell phone. That stuff is usable in a court of law because she's right there. And there's no, and it's your home too. You have the right to, you have a presumed right to record there. And watch how they react. Most women react very negatively to having their abuse being recorded, because they know
How
that.
dare you?
Exactly.
How dare you prove that I'm crazy?
Exactly.
Well,
so
here's an important point, and I'll let you go on. Okay, Ephesians 5, that part that women hate. I'm not even going to go into that. I'm going to say, it says, women, respect your husbands. Men, love your wives. Do you know what it doesn't say? It doesn't say for the man to trust his wife. Just love her. So don't have blind trust that she won't do something like this. I'm not saying be suspicious, but I'm just saying, okay, you can love her, but, putting a cell phone in your pocket to record her, you don't, when things start to go a little bit wonky, no, you need to, be aware and, don't have blind trust at that point. Do not trust an emotional woman, because when she becomes emotional, hey, she's actually becoming hysterical too. There is no reason. There is no vows. There is nothing in her mind that's going to keep her from whatever she feels at the moment.
Absolutely. So, I mean, and guys, when the cop shows up, you tell him that you have video. I've yet to meet a cop who doesn't want to see video of what actually happened. And that, if the cop is reasonable, that will help. And again, we're not lawyers, and a lot of lawyers will say, just don't talk to cops at all. And I understand that. I really do. but I don't know that. I don't know how many of us are going to have a lawyer on speed dial for DV that we can just get a hold of whenever something's going down. So, you know, it might be that you end up having to talk to the cop, or maybe just say, "Hey, look, officer, I have some video that shows what was going on before you arrived." If you just leave it at that, I know some lawyers who will say that that's okay. Some won't. It is going to depend. Everyone, you do need to know your local laws here. That's going to matter for how this works for you guys. But and it's not to say that you can't work with cops. You need to understand what their programming is. You need to understand what their sort of work and life situation is going to be, and all the things that are arrayed against you. But if you think that this cop might be willing to listen to you a little bit, or you just say, "Hey, look, I need to get this on the record," and you show the cop the video, make sure the video is saved elsewhere, not just on your phone. It needs to be saved somewhere else. There's apps that'll help you do that. But you know, it's like, we're not, I'm not going to advocate personally that you approach cops with hostility. I don't think that will get us anywhere, because they're just going to be hostile back to us, and they're already programmed to be hostile to us.
Well, we've been at this for a little over an hour and 15 minutes.
Yep.
So I think we've pretty much explored this subject. So I'll make some concluding points.
Okay.
Men, do not think just because you're a good man, a moral man, a principled man, done your duty, your marriage might be a little bit rocky, or it might be fine. Do not think at any point that you are absolutely immune from a DV, domestic violence situation. It's up to you to realize this. And as Plutarch said, you know, maybe video some of it, which means being aware early and not having blind trust that nothing bad is going to happen. Then when the police arrive, if such thing happens, they might actually be friendly towards you. Don't assume that they're your friends. Guard what you say to them. Show them the video. Be aware of what can happen. And to the police, you know, we've kind of advised them what to do. This is a modern problem that men in previous times didn't have to deal with. And you can be fine with the law, but the color of law could devastate you. That's my summary.
Yeah.
I got a summary.
Go for it, Sam.
Men, don't put your dick in crazy, but if you do, use a pseudonym.
Make it so they can't find you. I like that. Yeah. My personal view on that is, just don't stick your dick in crazy. It is not worth it. I know it looks like fun, but oh man, given where we are with policing these days, I don't know that it's ever going to be worth it for you guys. I just want to sum up by reiterating something I said earlier to the cops. Gentlemen, I do respect that you have a difficult job. I firmly believe that, and I think we have evidence now that what you're doing is actually going to make your job continually harder in the future. And it is my hope that you can see that in this video, that you can see how the cycle that you're a part of is making your future harder by increasing the number of criminals that you're going to have to deal with. So yeah, that would be my sum up. I am not quite so anti-cop maybe as Steve is, but even now I don't want to help you guys. I can't get there because I know you won't help me.
Hey, I'm
So,
not anti-cop.
I know.
I'm a law-abiding guy. I'll give you guys respect. I don't trust you though. I'm not going to come to your help.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for this one, guys. We will see you in the next one.
Okay.
Later.
Thanks for having me on. See ya.
Yep.
Thanks, Sam.